Hi everyone, welcome to El Diálogo Latino. Today, please join me in welcoming the Administrative Director of the Governor's Commission on Hispanic Affairs and the Commission on Caribbean Affairs, Dr. Aitza Haddad Nunez. Dr. Nunez, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. To get ourselves started here, as a professor with decades of experience, we want to know what motivated you to want to get into the political field?
So that is, I think, is a very interesting question. Like even the fact that I ended up in academia, it kind of happened by a leap of faith. And I think I lived my life taking a lot of leap of faith that I have kind of basically let God put me where He thinks that I most needed. I finished law school in Puerto Rico in 2010, and right away I moved to Florida for a master's in comparative law. And at that time, I thought I was still dreaming of becoming an amazing human rights international lawyer, which someday I'm still going back to that, maybe in my 50s or 60s, but now I'm busy on that. And at that time, again, my passion is really human rights and anything that has to do with making sure humanity in itself, it's heading in the right direction. Like, we are all included, we are all living the most of our potential. And in that process, I started doing research in human rights, and that in itself was what led me here, because my mentor at the time in Florida, he recommended for me to go to Howard University and kind of like pursue a PhD, and ambitious little me, I was like, why not? So I applied, I got accepted, and I moved in the summer of 2012 to Prince George's County. And I started doing my PhD at Howard University, and in that process, communication, culture, and media studies, because I like the interaction between law, communication, and psychology. So during that time, I remember specifically in 2013, almost after a year starting the program, I got offered to start teaching. So, and it was in exchange of tuition, so tuition remission if I would teach a class. And of course, like, I don't know anyone who doesn't like free. I'm like, what? I don't have to pay for my credits. No experience teaching, and that's the moment my life changed, because I fell in love with teaching, fell in love with academia. And I've been teaching since then. And honestly, I really never thought of me even moving out, and I haven't really fully moved out of academia. Honestly, I still have my like little online teachings and little things like that, but kind of like even moving into any government position or politics in general, it wasn't never really on my stars or my bingo cards. I think it's something that it happened very naturally. The work that I've been doing throughout those years, even teaching, I did a lot of research in different aspects of, again, law, communication, and psychology, and it happens that those three topics deal a lot with community, right, immigrants, how to make sure differences are celebrated and not punished. And the opportunity came, and I thought that I, kind of like when I left the legal practice, I thought that I could do more, that the change that I wanted to do, I wanted to transcend the courtroom or small places. And I mean, of course, if you can get to the Supreme Court, you can make changes that transcend even those barriers, but we know what's happening with the Supreme Court now. So I wanted to I kind of went back to that place. I want to create change that transcends, and that by teaching after 10 years, a little more than 10 years, I started identifying maybe certain gaps or certain places in which I could do more. So I wanted my work to transcend the classroom, and I think I can now do that.
No, that's spectacular. It seems like you've had a very, very long journey full of a lot of different, scenarios, a lot of different environments. As a Latina, as a person of color in these spaces, in academia, where a very low percentage of our population has a doctorate's degree. What was some of the hardships, some of the challenges that you saw, trying to get to that point where you can actually really make a voice for yourself?
Ooh, that is a great question. And actually, in both, in legal practice and academia, the percentage of people like us, it's very tiny. But I think in academia specifically, just to get there, I'm so happy that I found Howard University. I'm not doing they're not paying me for this, but it really changed my life. I think when they say that it is the Mecca and the place where voices are elevated, it is really the truth. So as a Puerto Rican, as a Latina, as a person of color, I'm glad that I ended up in that place because it minimized some of the, I would say, social dynamics that could have been an obstacle for me to get to where I wanted. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have the struggles that our community have. So, for example, I come from nothing, like not nothing, but my family is definitely not rich. So just kind of like even having to figure out how to pay rent, how to get groceries, how to do the classes, how to pay for school, that in itself was an adventure. I became a mom at 19. I was a single mom. And when I moved out of Puerto Rico and I started in this journey, I had my kid that was almost 10 and I was also pregnant. So that in itself, and it's not, I don't think that is particularly of Latinas. I mean, most women or just motherhood in general can get in the way of your dreams if you let it. It's not some, I don't think it's automatically like many people think, because I remember being 19, getting pregnant, and people in my community down in Puerto Rico be like, oh, she was so smart, right? Like almost as if whatever I was dreaming was gone with that kid, and that's automatically not the case, but it can definitely become something that can get in the way. So language it was definitely, I think I'm better now when it comes, I consider myself fully bilingual, but at that time, especially when I first moved out of the island in 2010, I was just making a lot of mistakes, and right, like if I was saying the things in the right way, well, good, and if not, I'll try it again. So it was really, and then that family dynamics, making sure that the kids had the time that they needed. When I first moved out of the island, my husband, now we were just dating. I mean, we dated for like 6 years, and now we've been together for 20, but that in itself also. So just that, like how we see family as a culture, I think it's something that can't get in the way, not particularly in a negative way automatically, but because we put so much pressure in family comes first, right? And kind of social roles too, how it was perceived maybe.
Almost like a filter.
Yeah, like I've always been told that I am too loud or too much energy or too, and it's funny because I finding out now that I always been like that, but maybe in the past, in the island in itself, not much here, that maybe was a problem around my friends. And the thing that I could have probably was criticized for in terms of that, now in this position seems to be the quality that everybody likes.
I completely agree. I was actually going to say, I mean, we don't think that you're loud at all. I mean, we actually applaud you on your positivity, and I have to ask, how are you always so positive, so bright? I mean, it's impressive.
I think it's that, like I had so much of that, so much of people trying to make me think that I needed to shrink myself in order to fit in certain places or in certain positions. Like I said, we're not completely poor in my family, but we come from a lot of generational drama and trauma. So we were stable because my grandma did everything she could to have a degree that could afford for us to be good. But we kind of were poor at the same time, right? And we were, in terms of Puerto Rico specifically, we were navigating spaces that were at that time probably reserved for other people. So it wasn't that I wasn't allowed to be in those places, but in many instances, I was expected to tone it down, unshrink myself. And I think many situations people might have thought that I was just loud on purpose or too much on purpose, when it's just me. And it took me time to understand that I wasn't trying to call anybody's attention, I was just being me, right? And I didn't have to apologize for that. And I could be a lawyer, go to law school, and that was so funny. I remember I would go to surf, pour water on me, get a kind of like beach dress, and then head to the law school to get my classes on my notepacks, because I still like to write on hand. And this is the time in which computers were transitioning and start getting in the classrooms. So I was in the first year of law school, and most of most, if not all, of my law classmates were already dressed like you. Nothing wrong with that, but we're in first year of law school. Right. So they were already living the role with their computers, already in character. And here I am, my flip-flops with sand all over, all dripping wet, taking notes in my pad. So I've always been out of the norm, out of the rule, or kind of doing things my own way. But it's not out of disrespect. It's just the way I am. So I think it's really that. I apologize for so long that I'm not apologizing anymore, because my colorfulness and my smiles and how loud I am, it doesn't get in the way of everything that I know and everything that I can do.
Exactly. Well, again, you have to be odd to be number one.
There you go.
Now moving on to something a little bit more current. You said that in your journey and in your path in academia, you saw a lot of gaps. What were some of those policy gaps that you saw, that you encountered, that motivated you to be in these commissions?
So, for example, one thing that it was very obvious to me, and we hear this a lot constantly, but I don't think it's until you kind of see it in actual life that it really touches you. Law, society, and technology, they all go at very different speed. And sometimes we have seen historically generations in which there has been attempts to kind of alleviate the speed in which they're all gone, so we can find a balance in which as society we can kind of take advantage of these three worlds. Right. But I think, especially after the year 2000, and of course my background, it's my PhD is in communication, and one of the things that I teach a lot, it's mass communication, so I love that. And I love to kind of make historical connections, so I know that everything that changed technologically after the 2000s kind of allowed for social dynamics to move even faster than before. Like if you think about before the 2000s, you could divide generations almost in decades. Like you can't almost do that now, because 1 year, 2 years, 3 years is already enough of technological changes for the group of people within those ages to be completely different or approach life very differently. And that is great. Like I don't think we could do some things about that, but what it takes me the most is that there's certain conversations, specifically when it comes to the youth, that needs to change. And we are not paying enough attention to make sure that this information, as it's shared to the young generations in a way that they are prepared for life when they become adults. And adults, I don't mean just turning 18, which is important, but legally that it's the moment that they can call mom or dad anymore, right? Because now they are completely responsible and accountable for their own decisions. We live in a country, and almost every legal system in the world, ignorance of the law doesn't exempt you of responsibility. But I think specifically in this country, we have a great opportunity to reduce that ignorance. And what we do, it's not only not reduce it, but we profit from it. So we keep making any type of legal system, regulations even, so complicated that many people get caught up, especially the youth. So for example, just basic information that an 18-year-old should know in order to, like if I turn 18 today and tomorrow I have to go out and go into a government agency and make a case for myself or complete some documents, I should be able, and there's skills that are quite not there yet. For me, the main thing is the Bill of Rights. Like that is the 10 commandments that legally everyone in the nation, regardless of who you are, what you believe, or where it applies to you, right? You have freedom of speech. You have freedom of press, which is about receiving information, and many people think it's the same thing as speech. You have all the rights. So why are we not making sure, and it's a very simple language within those 10 amendments, that we can make sure the young generations are equipped with them. So when they turn 18, can you imagine all the problems that they would not get caught up in if they just knew better? My main example, it's the whole, think about teenagers in high school having boyfriend, girlfriend, and using their cell phones, right?
Right. It's definitely a big impact that's there on our society. and with the Hispanic and Caribbean commissions, so what are some of the initiatives that you want to see to be implemented? Perhaps ideas that you want to see to sort of start addressing some of this in these respective communities.
No, that is another great question, because we see constantly our communities being the ones impacted the most by these things, right? We see many laws being enacted with the most amazing intentions to create social change in the positive direction, but then the ones that get caught up within those are the youth. So as commissions, the main thing that we do, we're fact finders. Not me, I mean, I'm the administrative director. The commissioners within each commission, I call them kind of like the boots on the ground. They are the ones across the entire state, making sure that they're making connections with the community, and then these connections to be substantial and effective and appropriate, in the sense of getting whatever is needed to make sure that the initiatives that come from our office are not only grounded in what the community needs, but also that it's something that is not replicated, and that it's something that is worth bringing up to the level of the governor's knowledge, right? So we have that almost as a little piece of leverage. And we understand that there are situations that are sometimes that require crucial attention or that immediate attention, and kind of going in through the channels that are out there might probably take too long. So we can become almost as not a cheating, right? It's not that we can help you cut corners, and if there is a procedure in place, we're gonna come and remove this procedure and take over. But in situations of emergency, in situations of extreme importance, that are so crucial, that we have that opportunity to make sure that we can elevate those voices to the to the executive order office and the governor. So just like that, kind of like building bridges. We would, so it's nothing that we already have in, like, we are constantly creating initiatives that come and go. And that's why what I say, like, they have to be grounded on what our society in this specific moment in time needs. So that's why we play an important role, because we make sure that every conversation we have out there has some sort of outcome or impact, even if it's just collecting information that eventually can be put together for then initiatives or programs to be either developed, or for the ones that already exist to make sure that they take into account how people are feeling about them too. So it's kind of like an adventure every day, because we have an opportunity to create things that don't exist, but also help people to know each other that might be doing the same thing, kind of then start collaborating. They're kids. Whatever they do with that, it's technology. And there are many things that can fall within federal crimes or state crimes. Kids are not doing these things thinking about those things. They just thinking about the adrenaline of doing something in hiding. The mom and dad don't know. And if they find out, oh my God, I'm gonna get killed. Right. No, it's way worse than getting killed, because getting killed in our culture, it's getting un buen chancletazo, right? Mira, muchacho. No, it's about now you are not only committing something that it can be deemed a federal crime, your entire life can be, right, move in very different directions. And your parents can be federally charged too, right? And so again, it's just simple nuances, pieces of information that I started seeing within my students, and seeing how their lives were completely perfect one day, and then suddenly the next week they were trying to find out how to get bail, or for the most. And it broke my heart. Again, it's completely unnecessary that we are doing this to the younger generations. It's because it's almost like let's throw them all in the air and see who survives, right? And those who don't, they kind of fall into the cracks, right? The school to jail pipeline and all the different pipelines. And then those who survive that filtered, then let's see how they do in life. It shouldn't be like that. Think about how many kids between the 18 and 21-year-olds, their life get completely changed. And so, yeah, that's kind of like slowly started moving me in the direction of It's a little bit of my nerve sometimes. It's how certain terms are used in a very generic way, and how others are used as if they mean the same. Because not only this has the potential of silencing voices, it also has the potential of changing who we are just in general. It's almost as we are continue to allowing others to define us instead of us taking over the narratives and making sure people really understand who we are. For example, Hispanic and Latino. Many people think they're the same. They're not, right? Latino is a regional term. Hispanic is a term of colonization. So if you come from a country that at any point in history was colonized by Spain, that's where Hispanic come from. Spain, Spain, Español, España, Madre Patria, then you're Hispanic. That it's the right. So Hispanic, it's not about race. It's not about anything that you would probably look on other labels to kind of see what it means. It's really about the culture and the weather and how we engage with everything around us. Because Hispanics have this way to really embrace nature, food, music, neighbors, people, right? It's all about that. That is what Hispanidad really means, right? That the warmth of the people. But when it comes to the Caribbean, it's not that far from it, but it's also a lot of confusion. And I love that you're actually asking this, because something that I noticed as a Puerto Rican myself, and because of the status of Puerto Rico when it comes to the United States, there's certain spaces in which we are considered international, but there's certain spaces in which we're not. There's certain spaces in which we are Caribbean, but then there's certain spaces in which we're not. And I'm like, how can you tell me I'm not Caribbean when Puerto Rico is right there, right in the middle, not at the bottom, not at the top, in the middle of the Caribbean? And it's really about, again, perception. When it comes to, and I love kind of approach things from my expertise, communication, it's all about perception and expectation. You create an expectation, perception, and subject, and then people that have expectations based on that perception. That's why things need to be appropriate in order to be effective. So when it comes to the Caribbean, many people think that has to do with being part of CARICOM, for example. CARICOM is just an international bloc, like many other international blocs, like the OPEC, right? So the fact that we are not part of CARICOM has to do with the fact that we are part of United States and not that we are not in the Caribbean, right? So nothing to do with that. The same with, so many narratives tend to include or exclude different groups. I've seen now definitions of the Caribbean trying to include parts of Central America because for them it makes sense. Because when we think about who we are, we share not just the Caribbean Sea or that part of the globe in which the sea is, even if we don't touch it, the weather, the climate, the food, but also the beats. There's something about the Caribbean that also brings into this warmness that Hispanic have, beat, like rhythm. Not that Hispanics don't have rhythm, but the Caribbean rhythm, it's very different. It's infused with a lot of Africanism. The congos, la bonga, el tucu, tucu, tucu. It's so ours, right? So in that sense, when I think about how communities can, and like I think I mentioned it before, my main goal is to make sure all differences are celebrated instead of punished. Because something that I've seen when it comes to these terms too is that we turn to use them kind of like to think that we are all the same. And I love to be part of the Hispanic community because we all share very specific commonalities that make us a community, but we are not all the same. Not even our Spanish is the same. Like we all speak like, 17, 18 different words in Spanish. Like the straw, there are like 2 or 3 words that you know how crazy we can get with those. Straw, popcorn, and the shoelaces. Those 3 only. It's like, what Spanish do you speak, right? Puerto Rican, Mexican, Bolivian, Chilean, but at the same time, and that is amazing. That's what I want. When it comes to the commissions, that's what I want to make sure that we can get as a goal. That people embrace Hispanic community, but also embrace each little piece of what it means to be Hispanic, and not Hispanic as it's just one generic term. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes absolute sense. So, and talking in that work of, understanding these different communities that are, present in the state of Maryland, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're currently doing a data survey, right, to sort of acknowledge the presence of these communities. Can you talk a little bit more on that?
Yes, so we're trying to conduct our first in-house study. It is called Empowering Voices. It is not just for the Caribbean and Hispanic community. It is actually intended to be spread out across the entire state for us as an office, the Governor Office of Community Initiatives, to be able to better understand the needs of the specific groups that are within our state, within our jurisdiction. We know that they're Hispanics. We know that they're Caribbeans. We know that they're people from the Middle East, from Africa. But we want to know more. We want to know where exactly within these regions are they coming from. Not because we want to be in their case, but because we want to make sure that whatever their specific needs are that are attached to their identity, to who they are still celebrated here, are still taken into account here. And if there's anything that we can do to make sure that they can have a gratifying, successful, effective way of life here that includes those practices. Because we don't believe that in order to enjoy the American dream, you have to leave your cultural practices behind. But in order for that to happen, we need to make sure people feel welcomed. That they feel that if they bring that, they're not going to be discarded or pushed away or judged or be like, oh, I don't like what you're bringing. No, we are going to be like, oh, that's what you're bringing, bring it, right? And we're going to make a puzzle of everybody's little piece. And that's kind of like what we try to make sure with this study, that it brings enough data, even if it's just a pilot, and even if we have to repeat it again next year. Again, it is a little ambitious being the first one, but we're already collecting pretty good information. We're already getting a better glimpse of how our communities actually look like when it comes to the state. And I think that is going to give us a really good opportunity to tailor our initiatives in a way that are more closely related to who they are.
Well, it seems that in addition to doing that data search to understand the community, you're also doing a lot of work in what is empowering the community through resources. To our understanding, you have a sort of virtual series that you do. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that works to empower the community?
So yeah, we did 2 series. We did one in Spanish for the Hispanic community during the summer, and then we did one in English for the Caribbean community. The Hispanic one, that one we've kind of tried to, they were both open conversations, right? They were both open dialogues. If for any reason there was a day that we had a special guest and the conversation was going to be a little more one-sided, then they were recorded. If not, they tried not to record them so people could feel comfortable actually talking about how they felt about these topics. We tried to structure them around, so Series de Verano, which is the one for the Hispanic, was about financial literacy and how that interconnects with sustainability and health, be it physically and mentally. So this whole interaction about, well, if you're not healthy, you can really produce certain things, or if you eat well, this might give you the energy for, so certain things that sometimes we kind of think in very small levels, but actually have a huge impact in the way that we live our lives every day. But also kind of like allowing them to have also a better understanding of how to create generational wealth, which is so important within our communities. There's not that many, but that doesn't mean that there's not the potential of creating, and it's that many don't know how to. We also did the one for the Caribbean community. That one was a little more centered in the same topics, but it highlighted more the aspect of sustainability. We created a kind of like a terms that it's kind of like the brand of what we were trying to do, or a little movement that hasn't stopped yet. It's called Sustain Forward. And what we're trying to do is that use that as a kind of, again, our brand, that when people hear it, eventually they know exactly what we're talking about. And it's a way to basically moving forward with what people already have, to make sure that this idea of sustainability is not just attainable, but also for the long term, right? For the long run. for example, our communities are big on environment, just very naturally, right? Like, I think like when I think about growing up in Puerto Rico, I remember just walking barefoot in the woods. I mean, we don't call them the woods, but just and getting like gandules with the hand or running around the chicken to get with my abuela to get the eggs. Planting, like getting the oranges, tamarindos, guayabas, acerola, everything. Like we got so much fruit. We got so much fruit down there. So it was already part of our life, right? I think it's when we started trying to put different names to those practices that we got confused and we thought that, I don't think this is something we can do. Well, you're already doing it, right? Like it's like recycling. It's like, think about our abuelas and those cookie jars, like you will never find cookies in those jars, right?
That's true.
Think about the butter plastic bins, right? Exactly. There's never butter in there. That's recycling right there. But again, our abuelas and abuelos, and they probably, by hearing these new terms, and that's what I'm very adamant about how we call things. Sometimes if we don't change things much in terms of how we call them, I think people will be able to relate more with them because they would see that it's exactly what I used to do at home. So when it comes to that, that's why they kind of focus on sustainability, and they're already over because they were for the summer. The goal is to repeat them again next year or better or bigger. They develop reports, so they're in our webpage on the GOCI page. You can see at the Hispanic page at the bottom, there is a link for the report and the Caribean too.
Well, that's a phenomenal initiative that you've put out there, and we look forward to hearing a little bit more about some of the fruits that's going to yield for our communities. Finally, as a closing message, we want to know, what's something that you would want to tell the communities that are impacted by the work of the Commission? What would you want to tell them to encourage them, to support them based on the work that you do?
To reach out to us. Our information, it's online, it's public. If you search Maryland Hispanic Commission, that is exactly what is going to come out. My email is there. We are eager to hear the community. We are desperate to have conversations with literally everyone in the state that can really tell us how it's life for them out there. So we can stop making assumptions about how people are living and actually doing the work related to how they are actually living. So please reach out, call us, email us, get to us, send us, I don't know, just make sure that whatever information you have that you think that we should have, that we can use, and that it can help us to make sure the initiatives are close to you, make sure that they come to us.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Haddad Nunez, we would like to wish you a happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Feliz mes de la herencia hispana.